This is still the introduction to Bulugh Maram. We're going to be doing Kitab al-Tahara, but we're doing some of the affairs of the introduction to the work so that individuals are comfortable with it because it's a work of hadith. So we're trying to give a little format before we do it, inshallah. That's what this class is going to be about today, inshallah. طيب? Okay, طيب. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Before we begin, as we've mentioned, the English text that we are using from the printing of Dar es Salaam, I've only skimmed over the work to just glimpse, at the text to see how it's presented. So I am not a muhaqqiq. I'm not an individual of a checker status, an evaluator of text. So I did not do a fine point, thorough review, checking of the work. What we mentioned from that particular printing concerning the Tarjama, concerning the biography of Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah ta'ala, as they mentioned that he is born on the 10th. Going back and reviewing the works from the Mashayikh, the likeness of Sheikh Uthaymeen, Sheikh Abdullah al-Bassam, from their explanations, and it is the custom of the ulama when giving an explanation or a sharh to a particular work, they are going to cover the biography of the author. However, they both mention that the birth of Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah ta'ala, is the 12th, and it is not the 10th. So this is something that I am continuing to review to see if this is an issue of uncertainty concerning his birth date and whether some individuals incline towards the 12th and certain individuals incline towards the 10th, or whether it is actually an error on the behalf of Dar es Salaam in presenting the birth of Ibn Hajar upon the 10th. However, upon review, from what I have seen from Sheikh Uthaymeen and Sheikh Abdullah al-Bassam, that his birth is on the 12th. So what does this highlight? As we understand that Bani Adam is the place, it is most likely you're going to find errors. You, I, the Mashayikh as well, will make errors. Sometimes it is a slip of the tongue. Sometimes it is a misquote of a narration, and likewise. So this is not anything that is foreign or strange. However, what it does is it awakens and it highlights moving forward that there is going to have to be placed more attention upon the actual text itself. Does it correlate? Does it go hand in hand with the actual text of Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah ta'ala? As far as translations and so forth like this, the manner of translation, the chosen words, that is not necessarily the concern. But however, given that at this initial junction, we have already seen some discrepancy, if we may say. Even though it is surface value, upon further investigation, we will see if it is actually an error, maybe it's just a misprint, or it is an issue that they differ on the birth of Ibn Hajar. We will bring that, inshallah ta'ala, as we move forward. But as we said, what it does now, it raises the attention that more attention, more concern has to be placed upon, is this a one-timer, or is this indicative that moving forward, there may be other indiscrepancies, if we would say like this. What we left for from the last class, introduction to the terminology of Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah ta'ala, as from the ada, the custom of the people of knowledge, when they are explaining a particular work, they are going to go over the affairs that are khas, that are specific and particular to that particular work. With Bulugh al-Maram, Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions in his introduction that he will refer to certain collections of hadith with specific phrases. So what we want to do is we want to become familiar with what are these particular terms, what are these particular phrases, what do they return and refer back to. Keeping in mind, Bulugh al-Maram, referred to shortly for Bulugh al-Maram min Adillat al-Ahkam, is a book of hadith. It is a very short, as mentioned by Ibn Hajar in his introduction, it is mukhtasar. It is a summarized work. It is a brief summarized work on hadith concerning ahkam, concerning particular rulings and verdicts. This is why it is referred to in English, Bulugh al-Maram min Adillat al-Ahkam, attainment of the ordinances, or attainment of the objectives of the ordinances, referring to the ahkam, the rulings and the verdicts, the guidelines, if you would say, from the deen. It's not a work on aqidah. It's not a work on adab, given that at the conclusion of the work, there is a chapter that deals with etiquettes, manners, and behaviors. But the core of the work is dealing with ahkam, whether it is miyah, waters, whether it is the affair of wudu, whether it is the affair of the ghusl, whether it is the affair of tayammum, whether it is the affair of the woman's menstrual cycle. And likewise, it is dealing with affairs of legislation, but it is a book of hadith. Given that that is the case, when Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah ta'ala, is going to refer to the books where he has extracted the narrations, he has summarized these collections with particular terminologies. These particular references are not going to go beyond 7, although he collects from more than 7 collections. But this particular terminology and phrase, wording that comes from Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah ta'ala, it is not going to refer back to more than 7 collections of hadith when it is utilized at its uppermost of the tiers. He mentions that when he says as-sab'a, and this is referring to the 7, he is referring to Imam Ahmad, al-Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawood, at-Tirmidhi, Nasa'i, or Nisa'i, as we've mentioned, and we're still getting back to this, inshallah ta'ala, and Ibn Majah. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 7. This is why this terminology is being utilized. So when he mentions the 7, he's referring to these 7 collections of hadith. Although there are more than 7 collections of hadith that are being referenced. You would have the Musannaf of Ibn Abi Shayba. You would also have the work of Ibn Khuzaymah, You will also have the work of Al-Hakim. There are other collections of hadith that he will refer to. So do not surmise that there are only 7 collections of hadith at most that he has extracted from. That is not the case. However, these are the main 7 that will be referenced, and at the highest of their tiers, it is this, as-sab'a, followed by as-sitta. You're going to have 6 collectors of hadith, the previous 7 minus 1. And that one here, I'm going to do it in red so that it's highlighted, Imam Ahmed. So when he says as-sitta, he's referring to that narration is collected and found with 6 collectors of hadith. It is Imam Bukhari, or Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, Nasa'i, Ibn Majah. 6. Al-Khamsa, 5. This is now where things will start to become a little bit more tailored around a particular collection of hadith. As we've mentioned, and we're going to mention the statement concerning the collection of Al-Bukhari and Muslim together. These two, with Ibn Hajar, within this work, in this terminology, are not going to be separated. There may be narrations that are mentioned, collected by Al-Bukhari. He will mention that specifically. He will not give it a particular terminology or phrase. These are particular terminologies and phrases. So if it is something that deals specifically with Imam Bukhari or Muslim, he will mention them directly. Other than that, you will see that these two, they will not be separated. They go hand in hand. Whether they are together, or in this case, these two are the ones that are going to be removed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Al-Khamsa refers to the Sunan al-Arba', the 4 books of the Sunan. Abu Dawud, at-Tirmidhi, and Nasa'i, and Ibn Majah. For the most part, individuals who are familiar with hadith on a basic level, when you say the 4 books of the Sunan, they are aware it is referring to at-Tirmidhi, Abu Dawud, at-Tirmidhi, and Nasa'i, and Ibn Majah. As a point of benefit and a reference, when that terminology is used, the 4 books of the Sunan, although it is referring to collectively all 4 of these, it is befitting, it is easier for you to keep them in this sequence. And always start the 4 Sunan with Abu Dawood, followed by Tirmidhi, followed by Nasa'i, followed by Ibn Majah. That is the general arrangement within the science of hadith. And with this particular terminology and phrasing of Ibn Hajar, if you keep that sequence, as he starts to change the referencing, if you keep that sequence, it will be easier to follow who is removed and who is referenced. So now, al-arba'a, the 4. I'm going to remove the first 3. And as you can see here again, these two are always coupled together. With this terminology of Ibn Hajar, Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim, these two will not be separated unless noted and specified. With this terminology, it always refers to both of them being together, meaning added or removed. The last here, الثلاثة, and this is why we mention if you keep them in this order, again, together or removed. 1, 2, 3. The first three and the last from as-sunan al-arba. So if you did this, and you separated between the first three and the last four, you will see that these always go together. There's no shift or there's no makeup that you have to keep any type of awareness of except for the last, al-thalatha. Upon every stage, these always stay together except for al-thalatha. Ashab al-sunan al-arba', except the last. 1, 2, 3. Al-thalatha refers to the first three of the sunan al-arba'. Abu Dawood, at-Tirmidhi, and Nasa'i, excluding Imam Ahmad, al-Bukhari, and Muslim. He continues and he mentions within the work, if he says muttafaqun alayh, it is understood it is referring to al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim. But this is something that is already understood and known prior to him having this specific terminology or wording. That is not specific to Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah ta'ala, muttafaqun alayh, agreed upon. However, if he mentions it, that's what it does reference. That's what it does refer back to. Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim. And he mentions everything else that he references is clear. Ibn Khuzaymah, Ibn Abi Shayba, Al-Hakim, Al-Bayhaqi, any of these collectors of hadith, as he's mentioning, it will be clear who he is referring to. They will be mentioned by name. These are terms, wordings or phrases, along with muttafaqun alayh. But as we've mentioned, muttafaqun alayh would be understood in and outside of this class. However, these terminologies is very important that you understand what he's referring to, what he's referencing when he mentions this. So now what I want to do, I just want to scan the room briefly. It's not a test. It's not a quiz. It's not a measure or yardstick of who's paying attention, who's not. It's not. It's just for familiarity. So if we say that the narration is muttafaqun alayh, Shaykh Yahya, what are we referring to within this particular work from Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah ta'ala? He's mentioning muttafaqun alayh. Who does it reference? Bukhari and Muslim. If Ibn Hajar, and you can look at the board, because this is going to keep your feet wet. If you would say you'll never get a chance to get distanced or separated from the material, if you need to, look back, because we want that connection. If the Sheikh mentions al-khamsa, the five, which five is he referring to, Yahi? Imam Ahmad. Hasb. Halt. What we want to do, inshallah ta'ala, we want to keep it in this sequence. So if you recall it, even if it is from the board or even if it is from your notes, keep it in the same alignment, the same sequence. As this is the sequence, not only with Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah ta'ala, outside of the Musnad of Imam Ahmad, this is the sequence within the science of hadith that is familiar, is traditional. So let's keep it within that particular sequence. Even if one is going to be missed and there's going to be a gap, let's still follow the sequence. So if we go from 1 to 4, 5, 6, 7, we'll still keep the sequence. Don't split it up, even though some may be missing. So we have Imam Ahmed, Al-Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawood, At-Tirmidhi. That's 5, hasb. So now we have to make some type of refinement, adjustment. You've mentioned 5 already. It appears you are going to continue. However, the 5 that you have mentioned are not the correct 5. Want to try it again? Try it again. The first one is correct. Ahmed. طيب. طيب.
But you said to follow the sequence, so even though Al-Bukhari and Muslim are together but not included in the 5,
طيب.
and then I had Abu Dawood, Tirmidhi, and Nasa'i, and then I was going to do Abu Hajar because I have those 5 with
What's the last one you mentioned?
Ibn Hajar,
Ibn Hajar. He's the mu'allif. He's the author.
Ibn Majid.
Ibn Majah. طيب. So again now, مرة أخرى من البداية. From the beginning, the 5. Al-Khamsa.
Imam
Ahmed,
Ahmed, Abu Dawood,
Abu Dawood,
At-Tirmidhi,
At-Tirmidhi,
An-Nasi,
النسائي والنسائي,
and Ibn Majid.
ابن ماجه. خير. أحسنت. طيب. عبد العزيز.
Yes, sir.
الثلاثة. The 3.
The 3 would be Abu Dawood,
أبو داود,
At-Tirmidhi,
الترمذي,
and An-Nisa'i.
النسائي,
Nasa'i.
النسائي. طيب. أحسن. Excellent. طيب. If we can have any of the sisters, Sister Zainab. Sister Zainab, can you give me al-arba'a, the 4? Abu Dawood, الترمذي, نساء أو نسائي or نسائي. طيب. ابن ماجه. طيب. ابن ماجه. ابن ماجه. ابن ماجه. طيب. ابن ماجه. طيب. Another sister, can you give me the 7? Any sister, the 7. السبعة. Imam Ahmed, Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawood, At-Tirmidhi, Nasa'i, طيب, Ibn Majah. طيب. طيب. And Sheikh, الستة. Give us the 6.
The Ahmed, then this one, combine Bukhari and Muslim as one set. Yeah, kind of combine them as one set. Then Abu Dawood, Tirmidhi, Nasa'i, and Ibn Majah.
مرة أخرى, one more time.
Okay.
الستة.
Sitta is Ahmed, and then Bukhari is being combined as one set.
So that's 3.
Oh, okay, but then, so then, okay.
It's sitta. There's 7 altogether. So one has to be removed. So the golden rule. Tayyib. So this is the golden rule. Understanding that the premise is based off of, at maximum, how many? 7. The golden rule is that Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim are never separated. So if I'm entertaining that group, that would automatically put me at 5. So that would be the deal breaker that will let me know I've dropped too far. Nothing of as-sitta can include Imam al-Bukhari and Muslim, because I automatically now go from 7 to 5. So how do I get back to 6? You wouldn't be able to. So in as-sitta, Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim, because as we've mentioned, nowhere throughout this terminology are they separated. Tayyib. So now, as-sitta. Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawood, Tirmidhi, Nasa'i, Ibn Majah. So the one, Al-Farid, Al-Wahid, the one alone that is removed is man, is who? Imam Ahmad. Tayyib, ahsantum. Excellent. What I want to do now, insha'Allah ta'ala, is give you something from the Mubadi, from the orientation and the beginning, from Mustalahul Hadith, from the science or the technical aspects of Hadith. Sheikh Abdullah al-Bassam, rahimahullah ta'ala, in his explanation of Bulugh al-Maram, as we've mentioned, we are primarily using the explanation of Sheikh Uthaymeen, but is being supplemented and supported by other explanations of the ulama. From amongst them, Sheikh Abdullah al-Bassam, he was from amongst the members of the major scholars of Saudi Arabia. That committee or that body, the committee of major scholars, he was a member of that committee. To give you the rutbah, the level of which he had attained. He was a member of the committee of the major scholars. In his explanation of Bulugh al-Maram, he has a muqaddimah, an introduction that he relays and he explains certain affairs in order to understand Bulugh al-Maram, to make it easy for the student to absorb the material, to engage the material. As Bulugh al-Maram, with it being a concise, summarized work of hadith, you have to understand hadith. When the discussion returns back, the narration that's collected by Ahmad, skip Bukhari and Muslim at this time. Skip it. At some junction, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, we will engage the conversation concerning the soundness of a narration in Bukhari or Muslim. But not at this time. That discussion is discussed. It's not a foreign discussion. It's not an ostracized discussion. It is the discussion amongst the people of knowledge. But it is a discussion that is of an advanced level. So at some stage, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, going through the book of purification from a book of hadith, given that they are from amongst the main collections of hadith, Ibn Hajar is going to scratch the surface, and it is going to be mentioned the realm of authenticity with Bukhari and Muslim. Is it infallible? Isn't impregnable? to a point where we could never say anything within those binders is questionable. No, with the people of knowledge, past and present, there are narrations that are questionable. The affair is in entirety, its work is not questionable. But because we are dealing with narrations that are clearly questionable within the Musnad of Ahmed, the Sunan of Abu Dawood, the Jami' of At-Tirmidhi, the Sunan of Nasa'i, and the Sunan of Ibn Majah, this has been grouped in the Sunan. So it's referred to as the Sunan of At-Tirmidhi, but its technical term is a Jami', just like the Sahih of Imam al-Bukhari is a Jami'. These details will come down the line. But given that Bulugh al-Maram is a book of hadith, we have to understand something about hadith concerning the sciences. Do we take it? Do we reject it? The acceptance or the rejection is not going to be determined by you and I. It is a discussion that has already been had by the people of knowledge, and there are some that push back on their particular positions. So what we want to do is understand, where is the discussion coming from? It's not so much that we are going to join the discussion, but we're going to entertain the discussion to understand what's going on now with this particular narration, that this is being presented, but it's not being utilized, because this happens within the work of Bulugh al-Maram. So we have to understand something about the science of hadith. Can I erase this at this point, or is it still in need?
I have my notes and look it up. So on the first one, the sit down, you have the red line crossing, even though they're both black,
Here?
the red line, so the red line, consistently red line, red is elimination. And so,
The X's.
right, but even the red, using the color red, because throughout, is X's in the red too.
Toyib.
So all your reds, except for the number, was the elimination. So it just automatically looked up and you see, like you said, the red, the line in between. So it was this elimination. So the color, the color coding, the black is staying. I guess that's where the confusion was.
Okay, so you know what it is? I see where you're coming from.
So like there was just easy to look up. Okay, red. Every time you see the red, and you were using the red, that was elimination.
So even though I'm going to erase it, because I see where you're coming from, because monotone, monotheme. So I will choose a different color to show that these are symbolic of that they're unisons. They go together. If they're mentioned together. If they're omitted together. So
What's the major thing on principle on that? That people, what is the major standing point? Why? They're always together. I mean, that idea.
within this particular terminology of Ibn Hajar, whether it's 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, or 2, he does not separate between Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim, except that he mentions it specifically, just Bukhari, just Muslim.
Is that a common practice?
That's a common practice. That's a common practice, that it's going to be an affair of these two will always be joined unless he says Bukhari or unless he says Muslim. Other than that, any of these terminologies that are used, they go together because their name is not being mentioned, but it is understood Bukhari and Muslim. No matter which denomination we fall upon, 3, 4, 5, they're either together being mentioned or they're together being removed. They'll always go together with this particular work of Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah ta'ala. Even when you get to that which is beneath Al-Thalatha, Muttafaqun alayh, he mentions is Bukhari and Muslim, unless we're talking about an individual outside of that, Ibn Khuzaymah, Al-Hakim, Al-Bayhaqi, wa hakadha. Ibn Abi Shaybah. طيب. In detail, no, we're not. Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah ta'ala, if you look at the explanation of Shaykh Abdullah al-Bassam, rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions the collectors of hadith that Ibn Hajar has drawn from. He's gotten up to 20 collectors of hadith. It would be very time consuming and tedious to a degree to go over their biographies and their rutbah, the level of status of where they're at concerning the science of hadith and the scholars of this ummah, and not get sidetracked greatly from the work. No, but what I do plan to do is I do plan to give you a handout of these scholars, as is from Sheikh Abdullah al-Bassam. Just going to translate it, the 20 individuals as he's mentioned them, as is, and they're very summarized itself, and just give it to you for your library. What he does not do within this, though, he does not tell you this individual was the student of this individual. A lot of these individuals were students of other individuals on this list. Imam Muslim is a student of Imam al-Bukhari. Believe it or not, if you would say. Some of us may not have had that awareness. They may just thought that they were contemporaries. They were individuals that stand upon their own. Muslim was a student of Imam al-Bukhari. Just like how we see Ibn Qayyim and Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahumullah. Individuals that are not familiar with them would say they were on great levels of this deen. They almost were like rivals to one another. You would say to a degree you could almost say that, but Ibn Qayyim was the student of Ibn Taymiyyah. And you will find as we go through the work, if you go in depth in terms of the explanation of certain narrations, you will find that at Tirmidhi says, I asked al-Bukhari about this particular narration and its authenticity. They were students of Imam al-Bukhari. Although being great scholars and collectors of hadith. And you will find this relationship between Al-Hatim and Al-Hakim. That student-teacher relationship. And they are also being referenced within this work of Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah ta'ala. So we're not going to, if you would say, go over the biographies of these collectors of hadith and their statuses and their relationship to the ummah concerning the science of hadith, their contributions and so forth. But what I do want to do for your own personal library is to give you a basic, as Sheikh Abdullah al-Bassam has done. I'm not going to, inshallah, decrease or go beyond what he has presented in terms of who are these collectors of hadith? Who is Bayhaqi? And likewise. And just give it to you for your personal library so that you have some type of reference point, some type of familiarity. But what Sheikh Abdullah al-Bassam also does is he gives you different fusul. So you have these particular subject matters as an introductory note to Bulugh al-Maram. The first one that he introduces is Mustalah al-Hadith, the science of Hadith. Is followed by Usul al-Fiqh. Is followed by Maqasid al-Sharia, the intent of the legislation. There are various usul that are presented to give you a foundation to absorb the material of Bulugh al-Maram. Sharia? Nope. And we're not because each of these sciences are sciences that are impregnated to a degree. Once you open that door, it's hard to not go so far in it without getting sidetracked from Kitab al-Tahara. And that's what I'm going to try to avoid, even with presenting what should be a welcome mat to the science of hadith. I only want to give you a foundation so that when you're moving forward, what is presented, plug it in. It's not going to be a class on hadith. It's not going to be very detailed, but these are some of the basics that are necessary. With that being said, we've had a particular discussion. This is from the Mubadi. This is from the introduction to the science of hadith. We all are aware of, familiar, and accustomed to the term Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Almost everybody is familiar with the wording, the terminology, the phrase, and comfortable accepting and welcoming of the term Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. The Sunnah is housed within the statements, the actions, and the approvals of the Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They're relayed to us through hadith. It is a foundation from our deen. It is a pillar of the knowledge of our worship to Allah Azza wa Jal. However, with that being said, concerning the mubadi, the introductory principles of the science of hadith, a lot of us may be unfamiliar with it. With that being said, not everybody is going to be abreast on it because it's a science within the classical works that has to be transmitted to you. Either you go directly to it because you have access and capability, or it's relayed and transmitted to you. In this day and time, given the technology, which is at the tail end of the availability of all of this knowledge, even if it was hard copy, for us to be at this junction shows that there's a separation. There's a rift between us and the basic foundations of our deen. How we got there is a discussion. Are we going to continue to stay there? Is a discussion. The individuals who can facilitate that ease, are they going to? Is a discussion. The individuals who are capable of doing so but are not doing so is a discussion. So with that being said, the introductory principles of the science of hadith should be something that all of us at this stage of our life, we should be beyond it. This is like if I came before you and I started to teach all of you a class on being introduced to Islam, a class for, as we say, new shahadas. And then Sheikh Yahya, Abdul Aziz, Sheikh Mustafa, they said, Akhi, we appreciate the knowledge, but we've all been Muslim for 15 to 20 years. This class is kind of a brief reminder, but there are other things that we could address as opposed to doing a new Shahada class for everybody within this room. We're beyond that. That discussion should be the same when it comes to the basics of the science of hadith. That if we inquired, what is a sahih hadith? Some discussion should be had. Some discussion should be had. If we ask individuals about the Quran, I'm more than confident that just about everybody in this room can start the discussion and keep the ball rolling. It should be like that for hadith. So, with that being said, these are affairs that are very necessary. We're behind the eight ball on it, but it's going to help facilitate a welcoming and an understanding, a passage as we go through narrations, because Ibn Hajar meticulously chose particular narrations. So there's a care in approaching and engaging those narrations to understand. There's very few wordings, but with great meanings that come from particular narrations. You have to be on board upon every junction, every base, or else you'll miss out on some of the beauty of this particular work. Now, it will come. It will come. It's something that, as it is in the introduction of Sheikh Abdullah al-Bassam, is part, it's the nucleus of the work. That's why it's been given as an introductory principle. Hadith, usul al-fiqh, and the goal, the purpose, and the intent of the legislation itself. What it means to the servant on how he's now going to view and reference this particular work. So as we get to certain narrations, you'll start to see between the hadith, between usul al-fiqh, the intent and the purpose of the legislation on how now certain rulings are derived. The connection. All of these are connected. You cannot fully engage this work, Bulugh al-Maram, solely from an eye of hadith and exclude usul al-fiqh and the intent of the legislation. Likewise, you cannot just approach it from a position of usul al-fiqh and just deny the light of hadith and understand this particular work. It's not going to happen. All of them engage one another. But with hadith and usul al-fiqh, we have to give you some of the mubadi. With usul al-fiqh, we'll scroll back on it because it's going to come throughout the work, no doubt. But there are certain principles, one or two, we just want you to understand is understanding and its application. So as we move forward, if you have that, it will facilitate and make easy for you moving forward narrations that are going to come. So with that being said, can I erase this? Tayyib? طيب. تقسيم الحديث من حيث القبول. This is from the work of Sheikh Abdullah al-Bassam, rahimahullah ta'ala. The classification and the categorization of hadith regarding its acceptance. So there's going to be a breakdown here. It's very important, as mentioned by the people of knowledge. Anytime there is a enumeration, a categorization, that enumeration or categorization is as crucial to the subject as the material that's going to be explained. If you're relaying, studying Tawheed, if you're going to categorize Tawheed in three categories, despite what is the understanding of the categories, if you do not have the correct classification, that is three, you're not going to understand the categorization. They go hand in hand. So anytime you find that there is an enumeration, seven, what does the seven refer to? Tawheed being three. What are the three branches? Water being two or three categories. What are the categories? If you don't have the categories, you're not going to understand the breakdown, what they're attached to. With the categorization of hadith regarding its acceptance, Sheikh Abdullah al-Bassam, rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions, ينقسم إلى أربعة أقسام. It breaks down to four categories. Before you write, I'm only giving two for a reason. Because the two that I'm going to give you, they break down into a subcategory. So one breaks down into the second. The third that I'm going to give you breaks down to the fourth. So I'm giving you the what they return back to. Don't worry about the subsequent branch. The first one, the hadith that is sahih. We hear this a lot. It's a category of the hadith that is accepted. If you want to look at the categories of hadith that are accepted, the hadith that is sahih is at the head of the discussion. There is nothing beyond. There is nothing higher in terms of level of acceptance of a hadith that is beyond that which is sahih. The second one I'm going to give you is Hasan. Sahih, we can say, refers to, I'll write this word right. This is sound. Hasan is good. This is sound, meaning it's sound all around the board. There's no imperfections. There's no fault to it. The hadith that is Hasan is a category of hadith that are accepted, but it's good. There is something that is not wholesome or sound like this, the one that is sahih. Concerning the Anwa'ul Ahadith al-Mardudah, one more time, Sheikh. Yes. I'm going to give it. I was prepared prior to the class to give you it. I started to question whether I should, being that you scratched the surface, you've reinforced it. I'm going to give. It's still basic. It's still basic. But I don't want you to commit too much energy in trying to commit it to memorization. I just want you to have an awareness of it. After I give you this, I'm going to go back to the hadith that is sahih because it is the marji', it is the place where everything is referred to as far as acceptance. It is the yardstick, and everything else falls under it. And it refers back to it. Well, how does it refer back to the narration that is sahih? It's the reference point. So, in terms of the categorization of hadith that are rejected, we have the narration. This is referring to the narration is da'if. It's weak. And Sheikh Abdullah al-Bassam, rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions, وَالْحَدِيث الضَّعِيفُ أَقْسَامٌ كَثِيرَةٌ. The narrations that are da'if, they are abundant in their category. The categorization that refers to the narration that is weak, the breakdown is more numerous than the categorization of the hadith that is accepted. And this is why Shaykh Uthaymeen, rahimahullah ta'ala, in his work concerning the science of hadith, it is actually one of the books of Medina. He mentions that the categorization of hadith are in 5 categories. Sheikh Abdullah al-Bassam mentioned 4. So how is that? Sheikh Abdullah al-Bassam mentioned 4 concerning that which is accepted. Sheikh Uthaymeen mentions 5 altogether because if you add this to the 4, you have 5. Remember, I told you I was only going to give you 2 because from each of the 2, there was a counterpart. So this is actually 2 categories. This is actually 2 categories. This is one category that has numerous breakdowns from it. But it is from the avenue of that which is rejected. So now what I'm going to do, yes. And this is because the narration that is sahih, it is either sahih by itself or it is sahih because it is supported from other than itself. So it becomes a narration that is sahih. So if we say Abdullah is a strong man by himself, he is a strong man. But then we say his uncle, Abdul Jabbar, he is a strong man, but he's only a strong man if he's with Abdullah. It lets you know there's some strength to him, but there is also some weakness to him. But his weakness is not shown, it's not evident when Abdullah is with him. So his strength is really from outside of himself, even though he has some strength. This is the same thing with a narration that comes from narrators. It goes from A to B to C to D, and then they say so and so. Sometimes you can look at that narration and you can say, from you to you to you to you, you all meet a particular qualification As narrators, we check that box. What you've said is sound, it checks the box. Your narration all around the board is sound. There's no imperfection to your narration. Whether it's regarding the individuals who it came from or what they said. So with that, a hadith, which is information that is just relaying or referring back to the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The hadith is information that relays back to the Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It consists of two parts: a chain of narrators and the information that they relay. Keep that in mind, because that is going to start to play into the hadith that is sahih. The hadith that is sahih, I'm going to give you now the definition for this, and this will be the marja. It will be the place that all narrations are referring back to. Has five components. Five components to the hadith that is sahih. It is ittisalul sanad. A connected chain of narrators. This is the first. Let me make this line with a different color. I'll use black. Transmitted by an individual of upright character. I'm going to explain this, inshallah. A connected chain of narrators, that is one. Transmitted by an individual of upright character, that's two. I'm going to write complete. Some may say perfect. And we'll get back to the affair of perfection concerning a narrator. Complete or perfect in memorization. This is three. A connected chain of narrators. One. Transmitted by an individual of upright character. That's two. Complete in memorization, or he's perfect in his memorization. That's three. And there are no inconsistencies. Slash. conflicts. That's 4. And 5. One, a connected chain of narrators. Ittisalul sanad.
Write this particular terminology of the principle in Arabic on the board.
It's going to take up some space here. Ittisalul sanad بنقل عادل تام الضبط عن مثله إلى نهاية السند ولا يكون شاذا ولا معللا. I'm going to give you all of this, inshallah ta'ala, when we follow back. It is ittisal sanad. Ittisal sanad. Connection of the chain. How is that chain connected? Binaqli. By being transmitted by adil, the person that is just and upright in his deen. We're going to come back to all of these ta'rifat, all of these descriptions, and give you a little bit more awareness to smooth it out. Binaqli adil, transmitted by the individual that is upright and just within his deen. Tamud dabt, perfect in his memorization and his accuracy. You might want to add that to complete in memorization or perfect in memorization, or you can also put accuracy. Tam الضبط عن مثله. He's going to narrate upon somebody just like him. The scale isn't going to, it's not going to dip. It's going, the margin is going to stay the same. It is going to be a connected chain, narrated, transmitted by an individual, adil. He's upright character. We're going to come back to this. It's very important, inshallah ta'ala.
That's why they're in these particular categories together, like the sitta.
Exactly. All of that plays into how you classify the work now. It goes back to this. And this, all of this goes back to our deen. Believe it or not. This is not a science that is derived, that is isolated or independent upon any reflection concerning the deen. It didn't happen at a time years after the death of the messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam, and they said, this might work. It came from the deen. It was only, this is only a wasila. This is not the ghaya. This is a wasila to help you understand what should be accepted or rejected when it comes to the messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's it. That is the beauty of this science, to understand what is accepted or rejected. And inside of that discussion, as the Imam was given the khutbah, because there was a lot of fitan, there was a lot of trials and tribulations that befell the ummah at the early stages of its generations. What we see now, no doubt it is a fitna, but the fitna that befell the companions of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the variations in the fitan, the trials that they experienced and befell them, were on a much greater level. How many of us today are really in fear of being killed by another Muslim because of what he thinks about the religion. Exactly. But all of that goes back to the basis of the deen. It's not foreign, it's not independent. It's not something that you look at and you say, oh, that's a science. You say, no, that's your deen. And this is why I say it's so important that these individuals, those individuals, whoever these individuals are, who understand the science of hadith, don't just relay the technical aspects, but bring them the awareness, the subtleties, the beauties of where it comes from concerning your deen. Why it even came about concerning the deen. The Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wasalam, never gave us this ta'rifat. He never gave us this terminology, this breakdown. This came later on as a means of need and necessity. Understanding what that need and necessity was will bring about a different awareness and beauty within the individual to understand. My deen is perfect. My deen is complete. And I need to understand my deen in order to stay out of the fitan of why this very science was exacted, where it came from, why it's even here. Understanding that will help solidify your footing and understand what steps to make, what steps not to make. But it is that connected chain of narrators, ittisal sanad binaqli, adil, the individual that is upright in character, in action, and belief, tam dabt, complete in his perfection and accuracy concerning his memorization, wala yakunu shadhan, and there's no inconsistencies, there's no conflicts. Wala yakunu mu'allalan, and there's no severe fault to the chain or the narration itself. The conflict, and as we mentioned before we put this up, we mentioned that the hadith is a narration that refers to information going back to the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It has two parts. It has a chain of narrators, and it has the matan. It has the information that's presented. The conflict, Sister Zainab, can appear in the min, or it can appear in the text. An example, we say, قال شيخ هكذا على شيخ هكذا على شيخ هكذا. The third individual, the individual Bashir, we say he's Bashir at-Tawil, the tall. That ta'rif, that awareness or description gets deleted somewhere along the line. And another individual that is known as Bashir is introduced in the chain. But this individual lives on the other side of the world. He's known, but we say he's never met Sheikh Yahya. He's never met Abdulaziz. We say this is an inconsistent, this is a great fault inside of the chain. Realizing that this individual is not who we thought he was, but it's only understood after examination of the men of the chain of the hadith. So at times the inconsistency can be found in the chain. Sometimes the inconsistency can be found in the actual text of what the individuals narrate. No, wa alaikum salam.
Yeah, I guess also what people would understand the term Sahih referring to two things. One, the collection, Sahih Muslim, Sahih Bukhari. And then for the specific ahadith, Sahih. The methodology that you're talking about is the methodology that was applied by them to each of the ahadith or the hadith that they had. And it so happens that with Muslim and Bukhari, everything in there has been this. They only have things that actually go to this category. That's why they categorize the Sahih Muslim and Sahih Bukhari, because all the hadiths in there fit those five.
Yes. Everything within the collection of Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim in general. In general. So we're not going to say 100%. And that 100% does not refer back to the discussion of is it accepted or is it not accepted. It's on a much clearer and transparent level that there are some narrations that concerning the science of hadith, it is understood that that particular narration itself is not a sound hadith. And it's not being presented as if it's the statement of the Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There are certain narrations that you refer to as being mu'allaq. It's the statement of Aisha. There's no chain beyond Aisha. We say, how did it get to Imam al-Bukhari? So we understand in the presentation, it's not being presented in a particular light. It's understood that every narration that is in the Sahih of Imam al-Bukhari's work, and even with Imam Muslim, based off of the categorization of what level the hadith falls upon, what level the narration falls upon. We would not, hands down, take it and say Sahih. But this is an advanced discussion. However, in general, when you approach the book, Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, you approach it with the understanding that what is in between the binders is accepted by the Ummah, hands down. Both of these two works are agreed upon collectively is sound. Meticulously going through narration by narration, you will find some scholars that say this narration, Imam al-Bukhari did not collect that narration of Imam Muslim, and he knew about it. He purposely rejected it. There are narrations that each of the two saw narrations that both of them viewed as being authentic and looked at opposingly. It's not authentic. There are narrations that Imam al-Bukhari looked at from the work of Imam Muslim and he said, not authentic. There are narrations that Imam Muslim looked at the work of Imam al-Bukhari and said, not authentic. There are other scholars outside of those two that looked at their works and said, not authentic, but not from A to Z. That particular narration that is G, that is an advanced discussion that you will find individuals like Muhammad ibn Adam that will look at and they will say, yes, this narration of Imam Muslim is not authentic. There are other scholars that will do the same thing with the work of Imam al-Bukhari. It's an advanced discussion. But collectively, hands down, as we say, both of the two works, they are sahih. They are authentic. But is it possible you can open up the book and you could put your hand on a particular narration, not just to say that's how abundant they are, but that if it came down to it, is it impossible that you could put your hand on a narration and somebody would say that that narration is not authentic? No, it is possible. That's just to show you that that discussion exists. It existed between Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim themselves. It exists with other contemporary scholars from their time and those that came after them, up until our time, that say, yes, we disagree with Imam Muslim on this particular narration. We do not hold it to be authentic. And the same thing for the work of Imam al-Bukhari. But then there are the other scholars that push back, like Ibn Hajar, rahimahullah ta'ala, and they go, bring us all your narrations that you have intiqad, you have some type of refutation or you have some type of dispelment for. And we will go narration by narration and show you why we oppose you on them. There's always pushback, you would say. No.
Well, later, without sounding like breaking it back, I just wanted to re-emphasize to all of us that this is a very, very, very important foundational discussion right here. Inshallah, if we want to go anywhere in the science of Mustalah Hadith, this is a necessary foundation that we have to understand from its foundation. The second point I wanted to make to everybody, please, we brought uh, some sadaqah that we're asking you to eat from and to drink from. In the back, there's some coffee and there's some donuts. In particular, we're asking the students that are here, please, please, please take from it, inshallah. I wanted to, this was the reason why I wanted to ask you the question about Ibn Majah. And I wanted to know whether or not you wanted to answer it here or you want to save it. It's my understanding that among the muhaddithin of the Sitta in particular, that he didn't do the meticulous job of checking uh, the narrators. He just took whatever hadith that he heard and he compiled it in his collection. Is this so? Is this accurate? Is this true?
What I was saying is that as it is well known, when it comes to the scholars of hadith, there are some scholars that are mutashaddid. They are very stringent upon how they grade a particular narration. And as is said as well, there are some that are mutawassit. They are mid-course. They are not very stringent upon determining a narration to be sahih, but then again, at the same time, they're not very lenient or very relaxed. And then there are some of the scholars, they are mutasahil. That some of the scholars, they look at and they say, this individual, a scholar of hadith, yet very lenient with writing off a hadith to be sahih. So this is the case, if you would say, that we could generalize a lot of the scholars without specifically, if you would say, pinpointing a shortcoming or a default, if you would say, because the person may derive that connotation from the discussion. But rather, we would say that as the people of knowledge have kind of grouped the scholars of hadith when it comes to grading men, grading narrations, that some of them, they are very stringent. Some of them, they are mid-course. They're not as stringent, and then at the same time, they're not very lenient. They just say, good narrator, lived in the time frame of this particular individual, may have had some deficiencies in terms of memorization, but still, check the box. The narration is sahih. Those are the scholars, if you would say, they are known and recognized by other scholars as being mutasahil. They're very lenient on how they grade men, which plays into how the narration is going to be graded. So it's based off of the eye, I would say personally, more so of where a scholar is grouped or categorized amongst other scholars that would give you that outcome. Instead of particularly looking at an individual specifically and saying this individual is not strong with the science of hadith and say, no, 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 we don't entertain it from that discussion. We entertain it from the avenue that there are some scholars that they are, if you would say, very lenient with grading a particular narration with sahih, with being sound, or with the narration being in the realm of qabul. Because the hadith that is sahih and the hadith that is hasan, it is in the realm of qabul. We accept it. You're going to work with both of them. It's not like you're going to look at it and you're going to say, this hadith is sahih, I want to work with that, but the one that's hasan, I'm going to leave those off. I'm only going to work with hadith that is sahih. They're all in the realm of qabul. You utilize everything that is acceptable. With the narrations that are da'if, you leave them off. You leave those off. So I want to go through this and I want to smooth it out a little bit, inshallah ta'ala. The first one, a connected chain of narrators. And it's like that from beginning to end. There's no break in the chain. That's why we're mentioning here connected. But as the people of knowledge, they mention specifically ila nihaya to sanad, to the end of the narration. We hope you understand that that is going to be the case when it is a connected chain. It is going to be from beginning to end. It is a connected chain of narrators from beginning to end. It is transmitted. That chain is transmitted by an individual of upright character. This is symbolic of Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu in ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in fatabayyanu. O you who believe, if a fasiq comes to you with information, fatabayyanu, verify it. Judge the information. Don't just, as the scholars mention, explaining that verse. Don't just hands down accept it and don't reject it. فَتَبَيَّنُوا. That's one. Just like when it comes to the akhbar, the information from Ahlul Kitab, we don't just accept it and we don't just outright reject it. There is some information that we know from the deen. It is substantiated from our text. We substantiate that text. There is some information that we know from our deen that rejects that text. We reject that text. Then there are texts from their book that we cannot affirm or negate. The tawaqquf, we leave it alone. We don't judge it. When it comes to the akhbar, the information of the fasiq, as mentioned by the ayah, in Surah Al-Hujurat, in ja'akum ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is calling you by your iman, that this is part of your deen. Those verses that begin with the call of iman signifies this is symbolic, this is central, this is essential to your iman. And iman is not supposed to be segmented and fractured. It's supposed to be wholesome and complete, and it's supposed to be total. This plays into that. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu in ja'akum fasiq. This is where a lot of us myself as well, we're not free from chastise, we're not free from evaluation. This is where all of us have to check ourselves. This is not to be looked at as now you are judge, jury, executioner with everyone else and you exclude yourself. In ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in, with information. But who's bringing it? The individual that is fasiq. So who is the individual that is fasiq? Is it the individual that you have some type of gripe with? You have some type of personal dislikeness for an individual who has done you some wrong and freed themselves from it, but you still haven't gotten over it? The people of knowledge, they mention an individual is fasiq, as mentioned as well by another verse concerning Iblis. فَفَسَقَ عَنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّهِ, when he did not prostrate. An individual that is a fasiq is an individual that exits from the obedience of Allah Azza wa Jalla. So now, if you hold that a man in puberty with sound understanding and awareness is supposed to be praying in the jama'ah, in the masjid, and he's not, he's a fasiq. This is not my understanding. This is the understanding of the people of knowledge. Why? Because you've gone outside the realm of obedience. If it's an obligation for you to pray in the masjid and you're not doing it, it's open fist. It's clear disobedience. If a woman is supposed to adorn herself with the adornment of the religion, and I'm not giving any particulars because I necessarily don't see the same particulars that everyone else sees in terms of the woman's dress. Even though we didn't get a chance to do that before Bulugh al-Maram, I have desired to do so. But however, yeah, according to the deen, the religion, the nusus, if her adornment and attire is not in sync with that, that is open fisk. In ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in, how many of us, there's almost no exception to the rule with us, with individuals that bring us information that we do not check it. And you don't have to tell the individual, Akhi, I'm going to have to verify your information because I honestly see you as a fasiq. That's not wisdom. Somebody comes and brings some information, you can do it wisely. You turn away, you figure out what course you're going to take. If you know, regardless if that individual is related to you, they're a common practitioner in the religion. I always see the brother, he prays in the masjid, this, that, and the third. There are a host of elements that you are supposed to fulfill. It's not to say, well, he prays in the masjid, he can't be a fasiq. It can be an issue of he backbites. You know he backbites. That's a major sin. That's open fisk. He brings you information, verify it. Doesn't matter who is related to. Doesn't matter his status in the community. Doesn't matter how much wealth he has. Doesn't matter what he's established or built. What is crucial, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned a reference of a particular type of an individual's deen. And again, don't accept, don't reject, فَتَبَيَّنُوا. But these are the individuals who exit from this. These are the ones we're taking their narration to relay back to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was mentioned that Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah ta'ala, was en route seeking out a narrator for a hadith from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he witnessed this individual abuse, I believe it was a horse. And he turned away and did not accept that individual's narration. He didn't even entertain it because of the way he mistreated that animal. I'm going to get to you, inshallah ta'ala. But all of this goes back to, this is built inside of the deen. These are the individuals that we're looking for when they're going to relay something back to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They're going to be on the highest of levels. These are not the everyday Tom, Dick, and Harry, Joe Schmo. These are the individuals that are of excellent character, upright morality, individuals that are fearful of Allah Azza wa Jal because they are obedient. They're not displaying anything of disobedience. Does it mean that these individuals are angels? No, it doesn't. But what it means is that there is nothing known of fisk with these individuals. As opposed to us, and this is where we say a lot of us, our personal selves, we have to check ourselves and understand where we are at. A lot of us may not be in a position to have our narration accepted, given the status of our deen, our personal implementation and lack thereof of the religion. So when I mention this, this is not to chastise any particular individual. It's not to exclude any particular individual. It's for self-evaluation. This is where all of us take a benefit from the science of hadith and check ourselves and understand if this was the mawqif, this was the position and the mind frame and the focus of the scholars of yesteryear, how would it be if they were amongst us today and they saw us in our daily activities and they would say, this particular individual, oh, he's truthful, but he might make some mistakes. But this particular individual, laysa bi'adil. This individual is not upright. This individual is not sound in character and deen. So The connection of the chain of narrative is transmitted by an upright individual in character, moral implementation of his deen is one particular quality and characteristic. The next one was completeness and memorization, perfection and memorization, accuracy and memorization. But before we get here and entertain that discussion, there were some questions. I want to make sure I can smooth it out before you move on to the next quality. I think, yes, this is complete in memorization, perfect. It was here at first. Complete in memorization, perfect in memorization, and if you would say is accuracy in the individual's memorization. We're not saying Mia be Mia, 100%. Yes, that can be entertained, but that is not the understanding. The understanding is that the individual is more correct than incorrect. And this is not to say it's a 60-40 mixture. What we're saying is that there are slight indiscrepancies within the individual's narration. That maybe out of 100,000, there might be 10 that he's made a mistake with. So we're talking about on a very small scale compared to the abundance of narrations that the individual is going to narrate. We're not going to say, for you and I, out of 10, you made one mistake. That's not enough of a yardstick. You got to get to like 100,000. I want to see you make 10 mistakes or less. Now we start getting up above 200,000. Maybe it's 15. Now we start getting way above that. You might say maybe 20. Out of that, you say that individual is basically close to perfection in memorization. Everyone can make a mistake, but when we're looking at it in terms of the total picture, this individual is tam dabt. And as you see now, completeness in memorization or perfection or accuracy in memorization, that's the third. There's no inconsistencies or there's no conflicts. Conflicts may be on a small scale. The inconsistencies may be on a small scale. And there's no faulty degree of the narration that is very severe. Something that as you look at it and you say, this is damaging to the narration. It's so conflictful, it's very damaging. There's no way to repair that particular situation. Those are the 5 conditions of a hadith that is sahih. The only difference now between the hadith that is sahih and the hadith that is hasan the completeness, the perfection, and the accuracy in the individual's memorization, it drops. The memorization, the level, the degree of their accuracy, it drops. Again, we're not talking about a 50-50 mixture. We're not talking about a 60-40 mixture, but we're not at the level where the individual is viewed as being tam dabt, where you will look at it and you will say this individual is almost of perfection in memorization. That is the only distinction between the hadith that is sahih and the hadith that is hasan. The accuracy of the memorization has gone down a rutbah. It has gone down a distinct level, but still recognized with accuracy. But not like the individual that is on the level of being sahih.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
Is there any question or concern?
Yeah. Before, when because you brought up the ayat, in the Jah Rasul. I mean, Jah Rasul, you're not bad for the
No.
And with the tafsir and also Asbab al-Nuzul, they said that the Prophet ﷺ came with that ayat after an incident. The companions to talk about the incident that happened. And so seeing the reference of what an actual person did when he was a Muslim, and what they did, seeing with the facet where they misinformed the people. They were coming for the zakat. And they thought the person was coming to collect. That was one of them. They said he was coming to collect they went to collect the zakat. And when he came, he saw he went to, the people were coming out to bring it to him. And he saw them, and he ran, he went back, and told them the people were coming to harm him. And so they went with the army. And then when they were coming with the army, the other people said, hey, they're taking a long time. So they started to bring it on that way. They said, hey, where are you going? He said, we're going to fight you because of what happened. Because they went on the narration of the person that was collecting the zakat.
Yeah.
And then they said, then the companion said that Allah revealed that to the Prophet
No.
that ayah, and
No.
they use that as a standard. So,
No.
a lot of times we have these terms and we define it by different things. But when that revelation came, there was an incident,
No.
different incidents, and they'll also use other ones that were similar. But these are incidents to be able to understand, the Fasiks during that time. People understand
No.
because they were Muslims.
No. No.
They did certain things,
No.
but it was something like you said. He went there and he went back and he reported something new.
No.
And that's why he says that after he follows it because you may harm people,
They
and
know,
then after
sir.
you regret what you did.
No.
And that's the whole thing. A lot of times when you don't investigate,
No.
then they didn't investigate, and then you go back and they was ready to harm you.
No.
But you're not going to give up the zakat.
No, sir.
But we have that example from
No.
the companions saying that this is this is when it was revealed.
No,
This is what
sir.
happened. And this incident happened. Then Allah sent that to the Prophet ﷺ to tell the people that the Jah.
No, sir. No. Asbab al-Nuzul, as the people of knowledge, they mention Asbab al-Nuzul, understanding the reasons for why the revelation has come down. And Asbab al-Nuzul, for your benefit, is a reference concerning ayat or a surah being revealed. Asbab al-Wurud deals with hadith. So there's a distinction between the two. Classical, traditional distinction between the two. But as the people of knowledge, they mention that هو يعين على فهم المراد من الآية أو الحديث. It helps you to understand what is intended from the ayah itself or from the hadith. أسباب الورود. أسباب al-wurud. From here. Warada. To narrate. Nuzul nazala. وَنَزَّلْنَا مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ. So whatever is dealing with ayat, asbab al-nuzul. Whatever is dealing with hadith, warada, wurud. So if you look for books of asbab al-nuzul, you're going to get material that references why ayat or a chapter was revealed. What was the incident that pursued it to come? When you're dealing with asbab al-wurud, you're dealing with situations of why did the Messenger of Allah والسلام, mention that particular statement? As we get to the first narration in Babul Miyah, the water of the ocean, there was a question that was posed to the Messenger والسلام, concerning the water of the ocean. That's why he mentioned that particular statement concerning the water of the ocean and is dead.
Is there a collection on watercraft?
Yes. For both sections, there are collections of works.
Okay, I know that. I know the first one, but
Asbab al-Wurud. Unfortunately, even like with the science of hadith, I don't think there's much work that's dedicated towards this explanation. This is a particular branch that helps you understand, if you would say like from the science of hadith, and even Asbab al-Nuzul is from the science of tafsir. So it's very important. It's very important.
We have real incidences of real people, and this really happened.
Exactly.
Let's see what they did.
And it gives you insight. As Sheikh Uthaymeen mentioned, يُعِينُ عَلَى فَهْمِ الْآيَةِ أو الْحَدِيثِ. It aids you and assists you to understand what is the understanding of this particular hadith. What was the incident that ensued it, that provoked it? What was the incident that provoked the revelation of this particular ayah or this particular chapter of the Quran? It's going to help you understand what is the meaning of those verses, what is the understanding of that particular statement. So these are very beneficial aspects concerning those particular sciences. They do help.
before you go on, go ahead.
Hassan?
That
Hassanun? Sahihun. One more time, please.
It's basically all the same as Sahih, with the exception that the memorization is not as perfectly accurate to the same degree.
Exactly. And this is why, Sister Zainab, if I have one hadith that's Hassan, then I could find me another hadith that's Hassan, which means that all of these qualities in the narration that was Hassan are here. It's just the issue of the memorization is a little weak. But I can bring you another narration in the same affair and topic matter. However, that narration, the memorization or accuracy is still a little weak. But I say I have two narrations now. And then I find another narration from a third avenue, same topic matter. But you say, you know what, his memorization is good, but it's still a little weak. He's not at the level of being Hassan. I'm not going to continue to grade that narration as being Hassan. Because I said, you know what, now between all three narrators, you've supported one another. And it's like now your narration is going to be viewed as if collectively the memorization from three individuals upon the same topic matter with no inconsistencies, with no type of severe fault to the narration. It was just the issue of the memorizer's memorization and accuracy. I'm going to raise you now to being sahih. But you're not sahih for yourself. You're sahih for other than yourself. That was the second category. You can be authentic for yourself, or you can be authentic for other than yourself. So when I got those, you brought me a narration Then Sister Amina brings a narration. Then Sister Fatima brings a narration. Then Sister Amatullah brings a narration. And it was only an issue of the narrator's memorization was slightly imperfect. It was just good. It wasn't at the level of being tam. There was khiffa. There was some slightness there that we would say collectively now, all of you can be in group viewed as being Hassan, all together, not one by yourself. We won't continue to say it is a very strong hadith. It is a very strong Hassan hadith. We will say, no, no, no. Remove it from the category of Hassan now. These individuals collectively now have now shown that this memorization can be viewed on the level of being sahih, but not for itself, so that the individual from the outside doesn't get confused and does examination. And he says, you brought me 4 narrations with imperfections, slightly. So say, I'll give you that. But you have to keep in mind, I'm giving it to you for other than yourself. When all of you work together as a team, we'll check you off for great teamwork. But by yourself, you all still have work to do. We can't give you that grade of honor roll. But all together, individuals work on a particular project, they got an A+. This is the same thing if you would say of elevation of status. When it is suited, but it's the issue of memorization. It's not an issue of the individual's deen. We're not adding character upon character upon character. We're dealing with an issue of accuracy and memorization. No.
Is this just Ibn Hajar's standard, or is this the Jamhur?
This is the science of hadith from beginning to end. Qadiman wa hadithan.
Second question.
You study hadith, you come to this bab of understanding what is sahih. This was not with Imam al-Bukhari, and it switched up with Al-Albani or Bin Baz or Sheikh Muqbil, wa hakadha. This is the science of hadith. Just like when you study Tawheed. If you said it's 2, it was 2 back then, it's 2 now. If you said 3, it was 3 then, it's 3 now. The same thing for the science of hadith when understanding what is the hadith that is sahih. When they put these sciences together, this is what we have in our hands today.
In terms of Wahud,
Wurud. طيب.
you didn't give me the name of the compiler who collected this particular.
There's various works.
Can you give me one?
Offhand, at the time, I can't. If you were dealing with Asbab al-Nuzul, I have more in my library from Asbab al-Nuzul. They're more abundant in my library. I'm more familiar with the Asbab al-Wurud, but there are books. There are books. We'll get you some, inshallah, if you want for your personal desire and library, inshallah.
The last thing I wanted to say about fasting, and the example that you gave, we need to be careful about, because you said that the person who didn't pray in the masjid, and they are conditioned even to that.
No, this is what I'm saying. If you take that position, because there's difference amongst the scholars, is it an obligation? I will say this. There is difference amongst the scholars concerning what is the ruling for men praying in the masjid. Is it a condition for their prayer? Is it an obligation of their prayer? So even though they're looking at it as something that is desired for you to do, from what level? Is this something that is a prerequisite for your prayer, or is this something that is an obligation for your prayer? هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته